Over one-step equation word problems, and you guys are going to use all of the operations in these. And this is what your guys' page looks like. I've split it apart like this so that I have more space to write. So just follow along and make sure you're writing in the correct spot. So the first example says, a female whale shark is 35 feet long, an average 12-year-old, and we're talking about 12-year-old people, so like sixth graders, is 5 feet tall. How many times longer is the fish than the average 12-year-old? So if you were to try to solve this in your head, you would have to divide. You'd have to divide 35 by 5 to figure out how many times larger a shark is. So down, to the left, right, I don't know my directions. You're going to circle the operation. So I said you would have to divide. Now, whenever you're writing your equation, in order to divide to solve, you have to have the inverse of that in your equation, which means your equation is going to involve multiplying. We know that it says is 35. Is another word for equal. So 35 is going to be by itself on one side of the equal sign. And it's not letting me write with my finger, so the handwriting might be really sloppy. I have to use the little keypad thing. On the other side, so we don't need the number 12. That's just talking about the age, like sixth grader. We do need the number 5. 5 feet tall. How many times longer? So we know that 5 times whatever number has to equal 35 based off of the word problem they gave us. And now we can solve by dividing. So if we draw a line through the equal sign, the inverse of multiplying by 5 is to divide by 5. So 35 divided by 5. Remember, what you do on one side of the line, you have to do on the other. 35 divided by 5 is 7. So x equals 7 feet high. And the word high isn't supposed to be there. There isn't accidentally a typo. It's just 7 feet, like times longer. So the answer, it's 7 times bigger. So the average sixth grader is 5 feet tall. A lot of you are taller than that. But a female whale shark is about 7 times larger than the average sixth grader. Now on to the next problem that talks about hot air balloons. It says, the world record for a hot air balloon flight is 65,000 feet high. Most hot air balloons fly 62,150 feet below this height. What is the height most hot air balloons fly? So that's 65,000. That's like a very large, that's very high. Usually hot air balloons don't fly anywhere near that high. So to find your operation, it tells you right here that it's 62,150 feet below. And the word below means to subtract, which means we're going to have to use the inverse of that in our equation. And the inverse of subtracting is to add. So let's see. We have is, that's your cue for it being on one side of the equal sign, is 65,000 feet. So let's put that on this side. And it's going to take me a second to write with this tiny little mouse pad. All right. Most hot air balloons fly 62,150 feet below. So we know that 62,100 feet plus whatever the difference there is has to equal 65,000 feet based off of what they told us. And I'm actually going to pause the video while I write this because it's going to take forever, so hang on. Ta-da! It took me 2 attempts to make it look that good. So 62,150 plus h, I used h because that's what they use, it stands for height, equals 65,000. If you look at this little picture that they've drawn, it tells you that the whole distance from the highest world record air balloon to the ground is 65,000. And then it tells you that 62,150 is the difference. So we know that this amount, which is the 62,000, plus this has to equal this big piece, which is how I got my equation. So to solve this, we would subtract, you would subtract the 62,150, and I'm not even going to try to write that out because, again, it would take forever. And then you have to subtract it over here as well. Okay, I went ahead and paused and wrote it. So subtract 62,150 from 65,000, and if you did that like manually by actually subtracting without using a calculator. You'd have to borrow a lot because of all the zeros, but I've already done that, and the answer is 2,850 feet. So H, your height, is 2,850 feet. Dun, 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 dun. Sorry, there's a lot of pausing because I don't want to waste your guys' time by me taking forever to write. I'm going to go scroll down to the next one now that talks about Miss Hotchard, and I think it's funny because it tells me that we've spelled her name wrong. So it says, Miss Hotchard's class is planting a garden. She divided the seeds so that 20 students had 35 seeds each. How many total seeds did she buy? So if you guys were to do this in your head, it's pretty easy. You would just have to multiply 20 times 35, and the little dot means multiplication, which means in our equation, we're going to have to use a division because you have to use the inverse. So we know she has 20 students, so we're going to put that over here. What we have to find is the amount of seeds. So we're going to do x divided by, and I'm going to use the fraction bar, 35. So now to solve this, we multiply. So draw your line through the equal sign. The inverse of dividing by 35 is to multiply by 35. And 20 times 35 is, hang on. Well, 35 times 2 is 70. So add that additional 0 on, and you have 700 seeds. And I just used an x, so x equals 700 seeds, and that means there were 700 total seeds bought. Last one, and the hardest one. So it says, Miss Whitrock's swim teams earned money at a bake sale. The girls sold 20 cookies at $4 each, and then the boys sold 18 brownies and earned $72. So the first time that I tried to solve this, I was kind of confused by it. The boys earned $72. We don't know how much the girls earned based off of, it didn't tell us in the word problem, although you could do it in your head. So the two things that we need to find are how much money the girls made and then how many brownies the boys sold. So it says find the operations because there's two. To find out how much money the girls made, you would just have to multiply 20 times 4. So circle that. And then to find out how many brownies the boys sold, you have, well, I guess you have how many brownies the boys sold. You need to find out how much money they were each sold for. So I guess that's wrong. I fixed it at the top. You have how many brownies the boys sold, and then you have how much money they made total. So you need to find out how much each individual brownie cost. So to do that, you'd have to divide. So our two equations, since one is multiplying and one is division, you're going to have the inverse of both. So for the girls, we know that theirs isn't technically an equation because we just know that 20 times 4 is how much money they made. And we're just going to use a G for girls. And then for the other equation, we're going to have to figure out how much each brownie costs. So 18, let's use B for brownie. 18 times B equals 72. So now let's solve. The girls made $80 because 20 times 4 is 80. And then the boys, we actually have to do some work. So we'd have to, the inverse of multiplying by 18 is to divide by 18. And it should be an equal number because we stole this out of the textbooks. And they try to make things as nice and neat as possible. So 72 divided by 18 is 4. So each brownie cost $4. And then the last question, it says, which team made more money? So we know right now, because we did the math, the girls made 80. And then we know that the boys made 72 because it tells us in the problem. So the girls made more. And I'm just going to put G.